It's a delight to be here, and I appreciate the late hour, but that you'll stay for what I think will be the most interesting conversation we're going to have at DLD. I promise you this. Because, Martin, you have an extraordinary perspective that very few people have. You have led the leading research institutions in America, and now you are here in Germany leading the Helmholtz set of institutions, 18 institutions. And so you have a distinctive, I would even say unique perspective on the transatlantic race on innovation. There's specific things I want to ask and specific things to do with energy, but I have to, as a journalist, reflect the moment we're in. That is, this is a moment where, in the United States, where we've had the crown jewels of our research establishment under attack in the last year or so with cuts in funding and politicization of science and so on. Even your beloved institution, you ran the National Renewable Energy Laboratories, which has been, again, a crown jewel. It has been no longer allowed to use the word renewables. It is no longer called NREL or National Renewable Energy Laboratories because the word renewables is verboten in the current political climate. So really a kind of a heartbreaking kind of transformation happening in a country that has been a champion of science. We have a moment in Europe where there is a huge focus and interest in reviving science and helping it translate to meet the challenges of the future, whether that's in defense or in climate. Can you give us your observation as you look on both sides of the divide of the direction of travel of innovation? How hopeful are you, or what are the signs of hope that you see?
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. Thank you, everybody, for still being here at this time. So, look, Vijay, you summarized this very well. It's an interesting time. So, yeah, we're seeing this massive changes in the United States. We don't know where this will go, what will be the final outcome. And then, of course, nowadays, there's what's happening here in Europe. I always say every crisis has also an opportunity, and you see this perhaps a little bit in Europe, but also here, especially in Germany, where a lot of people are saying, hey, now is the time, let's do something differently, go and let's make some changes. I always say we don't have to hide here in Germany. I think there's a lot of really good things going on in Germany with innovation, also on the way from our systems we have with the universities, with the extra university research organization, that is Helmholtz, Fraunhofer, Max Planck, you all in this area, Leibniz might know this. There's still a lot of innovation happening based on all of this very stable research funding. But I think we also can do better. And this comes back to this point, what really drives innovation. And I think we have seen this in the United States, where I think when you look in certain areas where they were absolutely on the forefront, now we're also suddenly seeing other countries like China really catching up, and in some areas we could argue perhaps even already better. So what can we learn from this kind of observations, and what can we bring here to the United States to build onto a fantastic research system, but make it even better towards innovation, also to do this to help our US,
well, that's the challenge, right? I'm going to press you on a couple of things. Europe has historically, and Germany at the forefront, had phenomenal science.
Yes.
Pure science, Nobel laureates. You can't swing a cat without hitting a Nobel laureate over here in Europe. However, not so good at translating that into commercial reality, right? Yeah. America has had a much better track record of getting from bench to bedside, as they say in biotech, your old field, where you started your career, in being able to get, we heard from a defense panel on the stage earlier today, a startup saying, I can't get funding, or venture capital saying, if you fail in America, you're given a pat on the back and saying, go start another company. I think here your auntie doesn't invite you to the next dinner party, right? Because you're a loser. And so the cultural aspects of innovation. Can you talk about what's changing here now that there is the imperative, both, again, from the security imperative as well as from climate and other social imperatives? What can you do to help rise to the challenge?
So, changing something culturally, it's a long journey, so it's not happening overnight. But I fully agree with you. We have to tackle this problem. Historically, as you mentioned, there is still this that why do you do science? And this goes all the way back, perhaps out to after World War II, where we decided, well, we want to do this for mankind, for the goodness of the world. So that was a lot of times where you see, we want to, everything is out there. I give you this one example, which was fascinating. In this meeting, I had this with a developer actually for AI in the United States. And he made this argument that, Martin, about half of AI was really also co-developed here in Europe. America just was much faster to commercialize this.
Right.
And this is a little bit one of these arguments. So we are not very good in moving this forward. And there is now a change. And I think we have to, because we realize that if we not bring this innovation forward, then we also potentially might lose our amazing location here in Germany for manufacturing, for our great companies. So we have to bring innovation. We have to link research also to an outcome.
So help us understand what your set of organizations do that might be different from Max Planck or the Fraunhofer Institutes, which people will be familiar with.
Yeah, so Helmholtz, as a very large research organization, again, we said 46,000 people. We have 18 independent institute centers across a lot of areas, from medical to climate to aerospace to a lot of material, a lot of information. What makes Helmholtz so unique, in my opinion, is linking research portfolios across the traditional boundaries. We're seeing this, and you're seeing this everywhere in this meeting, where we're seeing how our AI data is changing everything, from even this amazing presentation about gaming. So where are we heading? And this is also happening in research. So the presentation two before this, so the person made this comment about the daughter that studying biology and that worried about AI taking this away. AI will not take away biology. It will change the way we're doing biology. So to achieve this linkage, you need to bring different disciplines together. And this is what we can do at Helmholtz. And that's what makes us so unique, because we having this broad portfolio and we having this ability to look across the traditional pillars of research.
So silos, obviously, as people in the business call it, these research silos historically have been a problem, and not just only here in Germany, around the world. People tend to stick to their discipline. What can you do, or what are you doing now that you've got your feet under the desk there in your new job, to try to bust down these silos, to encourage interdisciplinary work? Are there promising areas? Is AI helping or hindering that effort?
So again, what I said, AI will change all our lives, and I think in science it will completely change the way we're doing science. And I think a lot of times we're talking about the bad side of AI, and most of the technology have a good and a bad side. But I think for research, for innovation, for our knowledge, AI will enable us a lot of new insights which we could not achieve without AI. So for example, when you look into a lot of our global Earth observations, linking this to deal with this massive amount of data, where through AI and getting this knowledge, I think we will be even better to make these observations into some of these models, which will also help us to understand some of these changes, which then will have tremendous impact on our agriculture's way, all the way to the way we're managing energy. So within energy, we talk about energy transitions. You're making investments for a long time period. How do we make sure that some of these locations we pick are the right locations in 20, 30 years because of the environmental changes, from water usage to wind changes to cloud coverage, as an example? How do we manage our energy systems? All this impact will, through AI, will enable us to do this in a more efficient way, and with this, I think also will make this cheaper to the consumers, because that's the end game. We need to do this, that we keep energy affordable for everybody.
So you've laid out a few different areas where you think AI will improve efficiency and maybe enhance sustainability. But in the ostensible session title is energy transition. So if we want to focus a little more specifically on energy, can you talk about, and I know this is one of the areas where your institutes, the different 18 divisions work on, what are some concrete projects or lines of research that you're developing that you think would help accelerate decarbonization or the energy transition?
So, as you know, Europe, and especially also Germany, made this decision to decarbonize our economy. Right now, there's a lot of discussions, is our energy cost too high? And I think yes, we have to look into this topic. Why is this important? Because if we keep this at a cost where industry cannot afford to be here in Germany, then they will go somewhere else, and this will have massive impacts to our society. Yes, but we still have to hold on to this, in my opinion, because climate change is real. It will impact us. So we cannot do one without the others. We have to approach this together. So we need breakthroughs. We need to make energy creation cheaper. In addition, we're seeing this massive changes in the way what energy we're using and how we're using energy. So what I mean with this, we're seeing an increased electrification. So we're moving away from one global molecule with crude oil, which we then use for everything, even putting the rest onto our streets, to a more distributed system. When we have different carriers, we have perhaps different energy molecules, but we're using more electricity. Now also this produced through different technology, from wind, from solar to geothermal, perhaps fusion in the future. So core will be, we have to make this cheaper. Give you an example of what will happen in the solar world. Some of you might have heard this word perovskite if you're in this field. It's this interesting molecule. It's like an ink. So the future will be that you make solar panels the way we're making newspapers in a roll-to-roll process, which will enable solar to penetrate into spaces which right now we can't. But even then in wind, you've seen what we're doing in offshore, and then you're linking this, and this is the most exciting element in this space. Look at the cost decrease in storage. And continue, if you plot this, and I think there's a lot of optimism showing that this will continue to decrease, where you now see, well, renewables are intermittent, well, we don't have electricity when the sun shines.
Well, you
this will
mentioned
change.
a couple of technologies I want to press on just a little bit. You had mentioned solar, particularly perovskites technology, and then separately you talked about storage. So let's separate those two. Looking at solar, and the prices have dropped dramatically around the world, and of course storage, let's remember the unstated reason for all of this is China, right? The reason energy prices are so low for solar and storage is because of China, which has its own particular innovation ecosystem. But then you gave a rebuttal in a way, and this is where I want to press on this. Perovskites are a more expensive, higher value added way of doing solar with much higher efficiency, for those that may not follow the technology. So is there an opportunity for the West to compete with China, not by doing a Me Too, doing the same batteries, but doing it up in Sweden and then losing a lot of money, as Northvolt did, infamously, but rather leapfrogging to the next generation of technologies, using that cutting edge technology and materials and AI and some of the advantages that Europe has, and being able to commercialize it so that you stay a step ahead. The great hockey player Wayne Gretzky used to say, you know, his secret to his success, he would skate to where the puck was going to be. And shouldn't that be what Europe does, as with perovskites?
But let me also just give you a little bit of perspective on solar, because look, you're right now the cheapest panels are coming from China. So there's a lot of this, we have to say, this transition towards this was also initiated to some of the decisions Germany made in solar to make it marketable. And then what happened, and now look, this is lessons learned. China was decreasing the cost because they integrated the whole supply chain. We in Europe didn't do that. So we lost on this aspect. The technology came out here from Europe, from the United States, and it all moved to China, and they mastered the supply chain. And by the way, we're seeing the same effect in batteries. We're seeing this now in electrolyzers. We have the same problem. So this is now innovation, and again, the crosscut comes in place. It's not enough just to develop this next molecule like perovskites, because it's cheaper, easier to manufacture. We need to look at this in this energy transitions into the whole integration of the total supply chain. I was part under the Biden administration when they, through Bill and IRA, tried to do exactly this in the United States. I mean, of course, now this is all gone. So now this creates an opportunity for us in Europe. So how do we integrate the supply chain? How do we look from the mine to the end users? So we cannot just do innovation on one element. We need to look at the whole supply chain. Only this way will we be successful.
I think most people that look at this area would agree with you, but the practical difficulty is that the capital markets are not structured to support what you're talking about, to go from so-called N of one, or the first plant, to the 10th. JP Morgan or Deutsche Bank is not going to fund that, right? They don't want to take tech risk.
Correct.
If you're a startup, you're in Series A, you have venture capital, but as we know, the European venture capital stack is not as deep as the American venture capital stack, but being willing to invest in deep tech. And so do you have, I know you're a research guy, but you do think more broadly. What did you see in America that Europe should maybe take a page out of the American playbook that's missing that would help the kinds of stuff you support here to get to scale?
So I think you have to address this at different levels. So when you look at call it the research innovation, you have to create vehicles and mechanisms where you build, let's say in my opinion here, onto the very stable, very clear, great, amazing, long-term ground foundations on research, overlay this with go, no-go decision so that you drive innovation on this side. But then you also have to ask this, what incentives to exactly avoid this? And again, I'm not an economist. You're much better in doing this than me. But the question is, if we want to be successful, we need to look into this holistically. And so how do you do this? That you encourage, for example, and create the incentives on, let's even call it in rare earth. So look, we know that there's a lot of resources outside of China, which we even mine, but right now they're all getting shipped and processed there. How can you open these markets? How do you make sure that there is a way that if somebody builds a competitive, that China, they're not underbidding this cost and they're putting steel in the ground and then China underbids it? Look, that's an economic problem which for me as a researcher, cannot. But I think if we're not looking holistically into all these elements, we as our democratic systems will fail.
One topic we haven't touched on that's related to the energy transition is energy security.
Yeah.
The Munich Security Conference will be here shortly. We had a representative on stage speaking about what's coming up there. Energy, he tells me, is one of the hot issues this year, with good reason. We have Venezuela, we have Iran, there's a lot of energy issues generally, but so too China with the supply chain. What is the pressure you're under as a research leader now in thinking about China, whether it's with collaboration or, I'll give the example of recently, you'll all know this here in Germany, one of the defense-related think tanks called out a project in offshore wind because a Chinese company was involved, suggesting, without evidence yet, that they would be spying on submarines or passing ships, and therefore it's a security risk. And the project developer kicked out Mingyang, the Chinese company, and local champion Siemens was given the contract. Now, I'd love to see what is the evidence of spying on submarines, but this is the world in which we live,
yes,
in which there is a backlash. So can your researchers collaborate with Chinese if they have world-class research? Or if there's areas in the supply chain where, for example, every widget and nut doesn't make sense to make in Germany, because then you'll be uncompetitive. So how do you think about this in a reasonable, pragmatic way?
Yeah, so look, the relationship to China is a very interesting one. I think there's not a single solution. I would say if you're a researcher, you're working in quantum computing, you should perhaps be looking into this in a different way than you collaborate on counting some mosses in Mongolia. So as an example. So it's not one solution fits all. But I think we have to understand, is this the right way? Because at the end, I think we have to be responsible that innovation technology develop, also that our German companies also have a chance to work on this one first. So, and then of course, energy security is completely changing already and will be even faster changing. We're going to distributed systems. We're overlaying our energy infrastructure with communication, and that's where you're hinting to with this issue there. There's a communication layer on top of all this, which will give them to this new attack space, how it's called in this area. We need to get ahead of this because energy security in the past was for protecting some of our refineries or some of the sources where the crude oil came from. Now, energy security is played at a completely different level, and we have to take this serious.
We're almost out of time, but I want to invoke a great anthropologist of innovation, Annalise Saxenian from UC Berkeley, who wrote a book, a seminal book called The New Argonauts, where she studied the ecosystems of innovation, and she argued that actually it's not the places that were very successful in innovation were not just successful because of government policy or even technological brilliance, but of people. The people that were in Tel Aviv and in Shenzhen and Bangalore and Silicon Valley moved back and forth. And of course here in Germany, connected to each other, and they moved ideas and new ways of doing things, and that the Argonauts of innovation, as she beautifully captured it, explained a golden age of technological innovation in the last 25 years through which we've lived, with exponential growth in multiple technologies. I fear that, in part with valid reasons, but in part for jingoistic or xenophobic reasons, not particularly fact-based, we are turning inward, we're turning on each other, and this will lead to a darker outlook for innovation, a subject you and I both care about deeply.
Yeah.
Give me one thought that would make us all more cheerful than that.
Oh, that's hard, because I tell you, you're absolutely correct. I always say it's all about the people. It's all about the people. So now, of course, with our systems, nowadays it's even easier that it doesn't matter if you're sitting in Germany, in the US, or in Bangalore. So we are all after COVID now. You're doing it. You remember when it was even almost impossible to do a video conference? Now I just do it on my phone while I'm driving. So this is an opportunity. And this, again, I think what you're saying is behind this. Yes, the world is getting more complicated, but there's a lot of opportunity to build relationships across our boundaries. And we, as researchers, we have to embrace partnerships with communities who are like-minded, because in my opinion, as a I love to be living in a democratic system. We have to protect our democratic systems. So let's build relationships and let's lift all of this. And it will be interesting how the world, I think on the long run, we will move back to integrate this, because this is where naturally the world will go.
Martin Keller, let's wish you luck in your new job and for your vision of innovation to come back to life. Thank you very much.